Hey everybody, it's Peter, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Hyundai Tucson N-Line and we're going to compare it to the Nissan Rogue SV. Now these two vehicles are interesting because I really like both of them, and in a world where the RAV4 and the CR-V are the sales volume leaders, other manufacturers have to do things that'll help them stand out. What's interesting is the two routes that these vehicles have taken. Like I said, I'm big fans of both, but they really take a different way of doing it. With the Tucson N-Line here, it's an overt styling exercise that helps draw you in with some pretty cool features. Whereas with the Nissan, a little less overt, obvious attacks on the CR-V and the RAV4, but more sort of in line with what they're doing, but there's a lot of great features that are kind of hidden in that. So we have an understated, legitimate competitor to the two sales leaders, and then we have the sort of overstated extrovert standout, and both of these are pretty good, and one may be better for you than the other, and we're going to examine some of the features available in both. So I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals. If you have a small crossover that you want to see, whether in person or on video, this is the channel for you. We have all kinds of vehicles here, mostly new or very new. These are both used vehicles, but they're very new, and I can compare them both for you on video and alongside other vehicles in the class. So if you have questions about either of these vehicles or vehicles in the class, let me know in the comment section. I'll get them on video, and if you want to come see them here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Canada's huggable car dealer. They are absolutely amazing. All right, let's get going with the review. So let's start by taking a look at this overt styling and talk about what's under the hood. So first of all, the Hyundai here, you've got some pretty cool daytime running lights, and that's what these are. These are not your headlights, so they light up the entire dash when this is off, or the entire grille. When this is off, these lights blend right into the regular grille. You don't even see them. The Nissan, again, more understated, simple over here. What you have in both, though, is quality LED headlights. Just so you know, the headlights are down here on the Tucson, and over here, same thing. Headlights down a little lower here. Both of these have LED headlights, so that's a bright white LED headlight, which gives you a nice clean cutoff, and it also has a color that's more natural or more daylight color, so when you're driving at night, it helps your brain identify what it's seeing because it's in a more familiar color of light, as well as being very bright. So sort of understated, sneaky, good headlights. What's cool about some of these lower mounted lights is because they're lower mounted, they can be really bright, but they don't end up being distracting. If you had bright lights up here, they're right in people's back window. If you have the bright lights down low, what that does is give you a really good ability to have a wide spread of light, and then it uses your daytime running lights because you have that sharp cutoff. These daytime running lights are bright enough that they actually help illuminate signs above your vehicle. So cool little features there. One little feature you're gonna see on both these vehicles is cameras facing forward. Now this one's got a camera up in the dash above here, right there behind the mirror, and over there. Both of them are gonna allow these vehicles to see things in front of them, and it's gonna prepare them to make an emergency stop if it has to on its own. It can see lane markers and help steer for itself, although they both go about that in a different way, which we'll talk about in a second. But the Rogue, again, a little more understated, has an extra camera down here, and this has a 360-degree camera in this SV model, which gives you that bird's eye view when you're parking of the car, with the car in the center, bird's eye kind of view down. This Tucson does have that available, but not on this trim level. It's higher up. Got a siren going by. Let's move on. We'll go to the next take and show you a few more things. So taking a look at the back end of both these vehicles, you start to see a little bit of where these sit in each lineup. So both these vehicles, again, this one's styled overtly, this one's kind of blending in, but you have a couple extra functions. Both of these vehicles are midline trims. So this one is the upper line gasoline trim, but as you move up in the Tucson lineup, you move into a hybrid, which gives you full features. This one here, midline trim, but you have some cool features, and it's kind of deceiving when you look at these. So first of all, backup camera standard and everything, standard styling. We're gonna take a look at the trunk in a second, but you have little dots right here, right there, and again on the outside right here. This has a backup beeper. So essentially, not beeper to the people outside, but as you're approaching something, as it gets closer, you'll hear inside the cabin it progressively beep a little bit quicker until there's a solid beep, and that means you're close to something. Now, some people would argue you don't need that with a camera system. I would argue that it can't hurt to have it, And of course, with the camera system, if you're not paying full attention to the camera system, it can warn you through your ears that something is approaching or that you're approaching something, and it can show you where that is. Now, deceivingly on the Tucson, you actually have a little red stripe down here that has two little holes where you could put that type of feature, but that's because this little red stripe is available in higher trims, and normally these lights in here would have the fourth. So you got two there, you'd have one here, one there, that would be the fourth ones. This one appears to have those beepers, but it doesn't actually have it. And again, there's a couple other little features that you see at these midline trims. These ones do not have power tailgates, so just a manual opening tailgate there and a manual opening tailgate here, which we're going to show you in the trunks right now because both these vehicles have really great trunk space. So we'll start by taking a look at the Rogue and the trunk space in here. First of all, we'll show you those little backup beepers or the sensors for them. They're right there on the bottom of your screen there. In here, you've got some cool stuff. You've got the cargo blind here, which can cover your cargo. It can also come out, which is of course super convenient. The floor on this is a very solid floor. You can kind of take it up. You can see that there is a little bit of space underneath there. There's a spare tire underneath there as well, and that kind of gives you space. Now the floor doesn't seem to drop down. You'll see in the Tucson it does, but pretty good space. Nice big square openings here. Not a lot of wheel intrusion over the wheel well. There's tie downs, and each seat, all three, have a child tether for the rear seats. Of course, 60/40 fold down seat. Lots of square footage of space in here. Let's quickly check out the Tucson as well. So the Tucson, again, very bottom of your screen, red stripe, two little red dots right here. Those are not parking sensors, they just could have been. Overall, this looks like the swoopier styled vehicle, but it is very squared out and very large in here as well. 1, 2, 3 child tethers. You can fold down the seats with the little handles right here. This one has a 12-volt port on the left-hand side. So does the Rogue. I didn't show you that there. And this floor also comes down. Now this floor is a little thinner, but it's still very strong, but it lowers about an inch or so. So you can lower it down below the cargo floor, just get a little extra height in there. And that's useful when you have something like that cargo blind that we had in the Rogue. Now this one still has the plastic cutouts to mount one of those cargo blinds, but it doesn't come standard with it. Tie downs are here, but again, very good trunk space in both. Maybe a slight edge here to the Tucson. It is quite large in there for a small crossover, but again, very good on both. Since we're talking cargo space, both these vehicles do a couple things really well. They've got really flush roof rails here that you can mount other types of bars to, so they both have that. You can take your bikes, your kayaks, your canoes, any kind of accessory that you could take on both these vehicles. They both have that, which is really nice. Now, the other thing is we're about to show you the back seats. Before we show you the back seats, if I open the door here, you're gonna see that the door wraps all the way around the door sill. And what that means is that as you're getting out of this vehicle, you have a nice clean area. If you happen to rub your pants on there, which again, you can do on a taller vehicle, it stays clean. Both vehicles have that, so same thing on both. Let's start by taking a look at the interior of the Rogue, then we'll move over to the Tucson, and then we're gonna get into the driver's seats after we do the rear seats, because the driver's seat, there's a lot of variety in there, which one may suit you better than the other. All right, let's start with the Rogue here. One thing the Rogue does very well is something that the CR-V copied. The door opens basically 90 degrees, so I can film right here and see in. You don't care about filming, you care about getting child seats in, getting people who have, maybe difficulties getting in a vehicle in and out, and the Rogue does very, very well here. So Rogue does a lot of things I like. These are both cloth interior. You're gonna see that this one has some brown tinge on the inside for some style. But you have a pocket here, you have a pocket there, you have vents here and there, you have a USB-C and a USB-A port, so two different USB ports there. Kind of everything you want. You also have the armrest in the middle here, which you're gonna pull that down for a second there, and you have two cup holders. So now let's go over to the Tucson in the same shot here and see that the door doesn't quite open 90 degrees. So I'm on the angle here. If I try to get it to go close to 90, it does not go. Not a huge deal, but worth noting because it is noticeable when you have, child seats or something like that in there. Same thing here. You've got those cup holders. You've got the pocket right here. You've got the pocket right there. Two vents, and instead of a USB-A and a USB-C, they're both USB-A ports down there. Now, one thing I like about the Tucson, which you may or may not like, is the Tucson has plastic-backed seats. Now, this one has a sort of a leatherette kind of vinyl feel on the back side. They are mainly cloth seats, but there is some a little bit of vinyl mix on the outside, or leatherette kind of feel on the outside. But The plastic back means if you have kids, you can wipe that with a wet cloth and they will stay clean, whereas the Nissan Rogue only had the cloth. So it's just something to keep in mind. Let's jump into both of them now and compare the seating for a 6-footer sitting behind a 6-footer. So jumping in the Tucson here first, again, we showed you some of that brown trim on the Nissan. This one is black everywhere except for some little bit of red stitching everywhere. This one is good though, because if you look down here at my legs, they are flush on the seat, which is something you don't get in every small crossover. Oops, going the wrong way here. Also want to show you my knees here. Sitting behind myself here, there is immense amounts of space. If you had a Tucson in the past, you may think you need a Santa Fe now. I can tell you right now, the Tucson has really grown in length, and a lot of that length is a little bit in the cargo area, and a lot of it is right here in the back seat. So great space here. And then if you haven't noticed yet, there's a panoramic roof above me on this end line. Now let's keep the same shot here. Let's just keep going live as we go over to the Rogue, because the Rogue also has some pretty cool features here. We're gonna jump in this one here. I'm gonna put the armrest up here, and we're gonna put the door shut. So the Rogue being the boxier of the two, you kind of feel like maybe it would have a little bit more room. It has a little bit less headroom. It still has a panoramic roof here. It doesn't quite go back as far as the Tucsons, but again, nice features there. You'll really see that as a benefit. One thing I don't love about the Rogue, it's really one of the only things, I really like the Rogue a lot, but if I put my legs straight, I'm a little bit raised from that seat. Now it's not uncomfortable, it's not a big deal, and the reason it's not a big deal is because again, I have immense amounts of room to stretch out. So both of these vehicles were known in the small vehicle class as, you know, they didn't always have a ton of rear leg room, but for the redesigns of the current models, you have great leg space back here. It's very comfortable in both vehicles. Now let's check the front seats. So heading to the front seat Nissan Rogue, again, you've got, here's your key. So remote start on the top of the key, lock, unlock, panic button, that's about it. Nice, small, compact key, which I personally like. I don't want huge things in my pocket. We're all carrying phones and everything else in there. So nice to have that. And of course, that means it's keyless entry, which also means it's push button start. So again, this one's all cloth, but you do have a powered seat here. So power lumbar, powered seat. And again, this brown trim doesn't show up great on camera. It's sort of, at least in my view right now, it sort of accentuates it. Now maybe in editing it'll look a little bit different, but it's a subtle brown with the gray. It actually works quite well in person, but it's gonna look a little bit, you know, standout-ish on camera, and I don't think you should get too much of an accurate view or too much of an assumption about it here, because it actually looks pretty good. You can sort of see here it almost blends in a little bit better. It's just going to depend on what goes on. So down here in the Rogue, you've got kind of a basic setup for a modern vehicle. You have the standard gauges, you have a nice display in the middle. The graphics here aren't fantastic, but they're very functional. And I'm just going to turn the climate system off for a second so it's nice and quiet. So you've got a lot of things going on here. You can have safety system set up, you can have four-wheel drive system set up, you can see how everything works. So really good displays in here as far as an information base. You're seeing a little bit of flickering in the dash. That's not flickering in real life. It's just the way the camera interacts with some of these screens. Over here, out of these two vehicles, this is the smaller of the two screens, but the clarity is very good. Again, the glare you're going to see on a camera filming a screen is more than you're going to see with your eyes here. So good stuff here. I really want to just show you the backup camera first though, because this is a real feature that you don't always expect. You've got your backup beepers there, which are actually not, they tell you that they're on or off. But then you can see nice clear backup camera, and as we turn the vehicle, you can see that that orange line tells you in the bird's eye view as well as in the backup camera sort of where the vehicle is headed here. It's really nice to have that bird's eye view in a crossover because they sit a little taller and you can just see exactly right below that mirror or right below that mirror, which is kind of cool because if you look out here, the visibility is very good, but you are sitting a little taller. So if there was a small child right there, you just wouldn't have any way to see them, whereas on the camera, you really can. So I really like that. Coming down here, again, this is an automatic climate control system. It's a dual zone system, so currently set for 23 on both, but you could change the driver or passenger side. You do have rump roasters, as I like to call them, down there. You have a heated steering wheel, which I like to use right there. We're gonna turn this off for a second so it stays nice and quiet in here while we film. And then we're gonna talk briefly about the safety type systems in here. So you do have a smart cruise control. You have all the safety systems in there. Nissan does a really good job of including safety systems, but there's this little button over here. Let me just see if I can zoom into that right there. That button is not your heated steering wheel. What that is sort of a, for lack of a better term, it's kind of like a self-steering type function. So it can see the lane markers in front of you, and it is capable of sort of steering the vehicle to keep it centered in the lane. Now on this vehicle, that only works on cruise control. The Hyundai's going to be a little different, so it's something to keep in mind here. Let's flip the camera around for 1 second, and actually let's go wide angle for 1 second, show you a little bit more. So there's your view here. You do have an interesting gear shift. Again, I'm wide angle, so things are skewed a little bit. USB-C, USB-A, 12-volt port, little spot down there. Interesting gear shift here because it has sort of a weird kind of feel to it. We're going to put it back in park there. Little different design to it. They give you paddle shifters on the steering wheel in order to manually shift, as opposed to being able to tilt this around and do it that kind of way. Electronic parking brake right here. Again, wide angle view is skewing little things. Different drive modes. What are they called? Let's see what they're called. Oh boy. There we go. We have the snow mode, we have the off-road mode, we have the eco mode, and we have the sport mode right there. So we'll keep it in the auto mode right there, which is kind of what you keep it at. I do like this center console. It opens kind of differently than most, but it is very deep. It's hard to show you on camera, so it's a pretty good center console for a small crossover. Overall, very nice in here. Not overly luxurious or techy, but again, nice feeling stuff. You've got a leather soft touch feel there. You've got metallic look stuff in here. So again, it feels nice. You've got some variety of feels there. Again, the brown on camera really shows a lot different than it does in person, so don't be turned off by that on camera. It just looks a little bit more contrasty than it would in person, but a very nice feeling here. And again, let's flip the camera around really quickly. So as we flip the camera around, you can see panoramic roof, and again, it's got a sunshade that can cover it so you wouldn't even know it's there. Comfortable seats, good seating position, good visibility. This is a very nice car. It's the kind of car you have to jump in and see if you like it. It's one of the things I didn't expect to like as much as I do. Now, a car I did expect to like, and I do quite like, is the Tucson. Let's jump over to that and compare some of the same things in that car. All right, Tucson, you've got typical Hyundai key here. Now, the higher level Tucsons have a whole bunch of extra buttons on them, but this one, again, remote start, just like the Nissan, the horn button or the panic button, whatever you want to call it, lock and unlock. So identical key functions on the Hyundai key versus the Nissan key at this trim line. Let's jump inside this vehicle right now, and we'll take a look at some of the functions there. Again, powered seat with the lumbar support, so matching that Tucson, or matching the Nissan Rogue right there. You've got the cloth seats, a little bit of leather on the outside here. Again, no two-tone here other than that little bit of a red trim line, but you have a lot of detail in here for various, you know, just visual interest kind of thing. Hopping in here though, you do feel like this is a more high-tech vehicle in some ways. So let's just jump out wide angle again. We're gonna turn the vehicle to the on, or start it up actually. You've got a dash here that is a 10.25 inch screen here and a 10.25 inch screen here. And visually they tie in together nicely. There's a lot of customization that can happen in these things. So the reality is Hyundai could have used these gauges in a better way. So while the Nissan Rogue doesn't have the digital gauge cluster, which does change with, for instance, the drive modes, you can see there's your Eco, there's your Smart, there's your Sport. So you've got different drive modes, and there's actually another gauge cluster that can be used. These are still always gauges, and they're basically always that size. On a digital gauge cluster, you have the option of really taking advantage of stuff, maybe eliminating the tack altogether, getting some navigation information in there. You don't have the same type of system that I think you could use to take over the dash here. And the reality is that most of the sections here are identical there. I'm just looking at hail jumping on the front of the car here. So we might wrap this one up from inside the vehicle instead of from outside. All right, so you do have some information here. And again, a lot of the same information. You want to see an all-wheel drive type setting. There are all-wheel drive. There is some navigation, but there's your all-wheel drive system in work. So Nissan has a different view than Hyundai, but again, good stuff. So again, a little more of a high-tech feel in here. And if we go wide angle, you'll see what whoops, let me go fully wide angle. Here we go. You'll see sort of what I'm talking about here. Again, that extra screen in here. Now, with this higher tech view on this level, you don't have volume knobs, you don't have temperature knobs, everything is a button. So you still have an automatic dual zone climate control system here. Again, the glare isn't nearly as bad in person as it is on camera, but there is a little bit of reflectivity to this. Cool systems here. One of the cool systems I like here is the unique diffuse button here. What the diffuse button does is take the air from just these vents and move it right to little holes in there. I don't know if you can see them, and little holes across here, and it diffuses the air all the way across, which kind of gives you a nice sort of breeze kind of feel as opposed to the air blasting you. So it's one of the features I really like about this car. But again, dual zone automatic climate control, 2 USB ports, not a USB-C and an A, just an A. So 2 USB ports and a 12-volt port. Again, matching feature for feature of the Tucson. Heated seats, heated steering wheel, same kind of stuff. Drive and terrain modes, similar type functions here. and a gear shift that is unique. This is push button here. Not everybody's gonna love that, but it does clear up your space here to be able to put things in the cup holders quite nicely. You do have a smaller center console here, but again, still functional. Where I think the Hyundai does well, oh, sorry, let's just, before we go there, those buttons here don't allow you to manually shift. So again, just like the Nissan Rogue, you've got the shift levers or the paddle shifters here on the steering wheel. Where I think the Tucson does well is their smart cruise control, just like the Nissan has smart cruise control. This is sort of that self-steering button. They call this lane follow assist on Hyundai, which is different than their lane keeping assist. It's a little more precise. Lane follow assist, again, sees the lane markers and it can help the vehicle actively steer itself to keep it centered in the lane. Now on the Tucson, it can do that without having cruise control on. So that is something that I think some people might like, but it is what it is. Let's flip the camera out for one quick second and show you what I look like here. So sitting in the Tucson here, there's a little bit more of a sedan type feel. I think the lines here are a little more stretched out than in the Rogue. The Rogue feels a little taller to me. This feels a little more car-like. I don't know that that feels different on the road. Certainly where you want the space, the square space, the trunk does very well. But again, I'm underneath the panoramic roof. You can get the the full shade to come in and have it appear as if there's no panoramic roof at all. But functionally, it feels very similar in here, although physically it feels very different. So if you don't like the seating position of, say, the RAV4 or of the CR-V, the Rogue gives you a little bit different option, which is similar, and then this gives you a little bit of different option. And what's cool about this class is feature for feature, you kind of get great features in both. You don't have panoramic roofs in the Honda. You don't have panoramic roofs, or maybe you do. No, I don't think you do in the Honda. You don't have it in the RAV4 that I know of yet. So you have some of those features here and a different seating position. So which one's best for you? Let's talk about that right now. The small crossover or small SUV segment has really done well lately. It's a hugely popular area, and most small crossovers have moved just a slight little bit bigger than in previous generations. So the RAV4 and the CR-V are continuing to lead in sales, but you have options. If you spend a little bit of money in this class, if you get out of the very bottom trim line, you're going to get safety on just about every single vehicle. And safety on a modern vehicle isn't so much just about crash performance or what happens when a crash happens. It's also about crash avoidance. Both of these vehicles are going to have class-leading features for crash avoidance. So that you have all of that stuff baked into these. Now you have to just decide, do you want to go with an other alternative to a relatively plain class, which the CR-V and the RAV4. They're handsome, but they're not overt. They're kind of understated, and the Rogue gives you a really solid option in that understated, but very good, very comfortable kind of environment. Hyundai goes at it a little different way, especially with this N-Line. They step out in styling. I mean, they all have this grille out front, but the N-Line adds these wheels, adds sort of the color package, and gives you sort of an overt styled option that still has the safety, still has the comfort, has a little bit more tech inside. It looks a little more techy inside, but it still gives you that cargo space and that full functionality. At the end of the day, if you're shopping in the small crossover segment, especially if you move out of the base level trim, you really step into a section where you have a lot of great competition. And that's what I love here about Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals. You can compare these side by side by side by side by side. We've got all kinds of here, whether it's Volkswagen Tiguan, Mazda CX-5, CR-V, the RAV4, there's so many more. There's way more over there as well. You've got these two here. There are so many options in the class, and it's really nice to work with one salesperson who doesn't care what brand you buy, but understands how to help you get them, gives you the same numbers on each car, so you're comparing apples to apples. And its greatest thing here is that it's Canada's huggable car dealer. The salespeople here absolutely, in fact, the entire team here absolutely cares about who you are, what your needs are, and making sure your needs are met. And that's why they allow me to do videos. So if there's questions you have about this class, let me know in the comment section. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll come back to those comments both in the comment section and in future videos. And if you're in Fredericton, you're looking for a vehicle, Canada's huggable car dealer, Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals is your place to go. Thanks everybody for watching.